Hello and welcome to another episode of the HaskinCast Podcast. I am your host, Scott Haskin, and I have stuff to talk to you about. I just got back from Sedona, Arizona, where I went on the Sedona UFO tour that our podcast friend Michael McPherson does, and it was absolutely amazing. We did a recording. I got a remote Tascam recorder and went down and did a recording, and we were out at the location, and this is how simple it was. I literally just set the recorder on the trunk of his car, and we were talking, and we were looking up in the sky through these spectacular night vision goggles. And then we moved towards the side of the car so that I could sort of have something to steady myself, because I was so excited and shaking a little bit. Just because there was so much going on. And I tend to shake a little bit as it is. I'm not a very steady person, so I could have never been a surgeon or anything like that. So we were doing the view, and when we moved to the side of the car, I gently moved the recorder to the roof of the car so that it's closer to our mouths, and we're talking, we're looking up in the sky. And I get home today, and I'm really excited to review the footage and prep the podcast, which is going to be airing on Halloween night. Or maybe before, I haven't decided yet, but somewhere around Halloween night. And there's not much there. There's this really weird clicking and tapping and scraping as if something was sitting there at the microphones, because there's a dual mic on it. And it's like they were just like scraping something like a rock or some metal alongside of it and tapping on it and then pushing their hand up to it or something so that everything was really muffled. I've been an audio engineer going on 30 years, and I have no explanation. Honestly, this is not a Halloween thing. This is not a promo thing. Seriously, I have absolutely no idea why the audio came out the way it did. I don't have a lot of experience with these handheld recorders. I've used them a little bit, but certainly never had anything like the experience that I had in audio the night before, or last night. Wow, that was actually last night. So I have reached back out to Michael and to see if he will record a podcast with me talking about what happened on the tour that I went on. And it was very nice. It was an exclusive private tour. I was very honored to go out and experience what I did. I don't want to talk about it right now. Suffice to say that I hope that Michael and I can find some time to get together and talk about what happened and what we saw and what can be explained and all of that thing. But I'll say, if you get the chance to do this, if you're in Sedona, the links will be in the show notes. They're also in the episode that he was on. The link to the Sedona UFO tour is in there. There's a couple, there's other groups. So make sure that you are getting on Michael's tour. It's absolutely amazing. The guy is so knowledgeable and it's really honest. You know, if he's like, you know, that's a satellite, then it's a satellite. And I will say personally, I had no idea satellites could move that fast. I actually didn't think they moved at all. I thought they just stayed stationary, maybe pivoted a little bit as they moved in the sky. But no, these things can fly. It's amazing to watch. It's really surreal, I think is the word that I would use. So that's the plan for Halloween, or just about Halloween. I've also got another episode coming out. So what I'm trying to decide right now is, do I want to do the UFO tour slightly before Halloween and then the other Halloween-y episode on Halloween? Or do I want to do a double header? I haven't really decided yet. But within a couple of days of Halloween, both of those episodes will be coming out. And I'm very excited to bring you both of them. And of course, it was great to get a chance to sit down with Michael and his wife, Carla, who has also been on the show, and really just have some really amazing discussions, as I always do with them. They're very, very dear friends of mine, wonderful people. Carla makes some beautiful art, especially if you enjoy Sedona scenery and also cats, not necessarily connected. She does a lot of stuff, but beautiful, beautiful pictures that she makes. Just really talented, amazing people, and really honest, down to earth. I'm not trying to get anything out of you. I just want to have a conversation type people. And I really enjoy that. You can really let your guard down and just have a nice, honest conversation, which I absolutely adore personally. So So that's what just happened. And then, of course, I'm very excited about the album Haunted Holidays Deadly Christmas 3, the third and final installment of the trilogy, where I take classic Christmas songs from your childhood and ruin them, twist them into horrible tales that you would have never guessed could be twisted. And I've had a lot of fun with this series. I have to say, it was just kind of an idea, and I thought I'd give it a try with a couple songs, and then I came up with the whole album, and then I kind of just sat back and said, well, what songs would I really want to do? And I came up with enough material for 3 albums. And I think I've kind of gone where I wanted to go with it. I have considered doing another album, but that's non-Christmas, but that's still in the Haunted Holidays series. I don't really have any ideas for it. If I ever do, I'll pursue it. At this point, I don't. So this could be the end, but it's certainly the end of the Christmas trilogy. So that will be coming out on Friday in all the usual places: iTunes, Amazon, Google Play, Spotify. I'm sure many, many more that I actually can't think of right now. I'm sure there will be a couple of YouTube videos. I have already released a video single of the song "What Child Is This?" and my interpretation on the real story of the birth of Christ. And it's good fun. And I have the video on my YouTube channel. And I set it to some fire that I took, I want to say it was either last year or the year before. I found a really nice little fireplace, and I just set my camera down and recorded for a while. And I just put like a nice little sort of a creepy filter on it to really enhance that Christmas creepy holiday haunted thing. And so that is available. The link to that will be in the show notes if I remember to put it there. If I don't remember to put it there, it's on my YouTube channel. What else? So that's pretty much it. I want to, I realized as I was thinking about what I wanted to do for my October podcast, I realized that I had a couple of horror albums that I hadn't done podcasts on before. And this one that I'm doing today, Kindred Spirits, actually ties into the Sedona UFO tour and Michael, because he's the singer that sang on this album as the lead character, sort of the main narrator, if you will. And I really love the work that he did on this. I love the style that he chose for it. I tried doing it, and not being much of a singer, I wasn't really getting anywhere. I had a few sessions, and it just wasn't going where I wanted to be. I didn't really have the strong enough voice that I wanted to for it. My voice tends to be a little bit thin and weak sounding, so especially when it comes to singing. So I didn't really think I was the right voice for it, and I had reached out to Michael, and he was happy to take it on, and I think he did a fantastic job, as you'll hear. I'm not going to play all the tracks on the album. Traditionally, when I do one of these types of podcasts, I play a little bit of every song, but this one's kind of a what really happened type mystery. So for me to play all the songs could potentially be a bit of a spoiler alert, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to play from selections of the album. The premise is that a man finds a house that he wants to buy, and he doesn't know until time goes on that it actually has quite a connection to his past. And and when I say his past, I'm not talking about this particular incarnation of life. I'm talking over the years, over the centuries and all that. So it's a little bit different of a story. It's more of a ghost story, which I don't normally tell ghost stories because I don't think I'm very good at them. But I was very happy when I wrote this. I think that it's a solid story, and I think it holds up. But I might be slightly biased. I don't know why I would be. So I want to. I have to acknowledge a few people though as I start this album, and I normally don't do this, and I really should, but normally I don't have this many people involved in a project. It's usually myself, Kelly doing the artwork, and then whoever in the past I've hired to do the lettering. Very happy to be continuing to work with Rebecca Poole of Dreams to Media. She does an absolutely beautiful job on the lettering. But this was before the time that I started working with her. So I actually don't remember. I think Kelly did the lettering on this one, if I'm not mistaken. I think at the time she was doing the lettering for me. And then she now just does the artwork, which she puts so much into it, and they're always so stunning. And this is one of the first ones that we had worked together on. In fact, this might have been the first one that we did, because I think this came out before the first Mental Sauna album. So I think this was. And I don't remember where she was, but she took a picture of a house. And if you actually saw the picture of the real house, it just looks like a house, you know, kind of out in the middle of nowhere, or in an area that looked kind of not, it doesn't really look like it's in a neighborhood from the original picture that I saw. But she just turned it into this amazing horror cover, all based off of this one photograph. And it was so impressive to see how somebody can take something so simple from that point A and then turn it into what she did. And I absolutely love the cover of it. So as always, with every project that I do, up through this latest Haunted Holidays album, every single one that I've worked on with her, I've absolutely loved. And sometimes she comes up with the concept. Sometimes I've come up with a basic idea and done a horrible sketch because I really can't draw, and I give it to her, and she questions everything that I put on the paper, and she turns it into something absolutely stunning. It's really an amazing process. And honestly, it's one of my favorite parts of putting out an album, is to see what she's going to come up with and how stunning it's going to look. And every single time, you know, she's so humble that she appreciates that I trust her with my creation to give me a visual representation, you know, sort of the eye candy to sucker people in to listen to it. And she's hit it out of the park every single time. And we've done quite a few together now. So it's nice to have part of a team that you can just completely trust. And same with Rebecca Poole. You know, every album that she's done the lettering on has just been amazing. And I've had to ask for very few revisions. It's usually just, can we change the color? Can we make this bigger? Can we move it over a little bit? You know, just little things like that. But I've never come back to her and said, I think you completely missed the point of you know, the story with that font that you used or anything. I mean, she does her research, and she really gets it. And she takes the time to care about what she does. And it's really amazing to work with people that just have that desire and dedication to put out something of quality, especially when another artist is trusting them to do it. So kudos to both of you ladies. I absolutely love and am very honored to be working with both of you. Now, this album has a bit of a cast to it. I reached out to a few different people, and you know, sometimes people respond, sometimes people don't respond, or sometimes they respond and they promise to do something and they don't. So I did go through a few different people in the process of putting this together, but in the end, I'm very, very happy with the people that I got. I don't think, you know, when it comes to audiobooks, it's very easy for me to direct those because I'm directing somebody else's material. The dialogue is very clearly written out. The narration is very clearly written out. And when I set out to write this, I really wasn't thinking in terms of that. I was thinking in terms of the story and not the readability of it or anything like that. So when I was directing people, I was really directing people more on what my vision of the album should be instead of really how to deliver dialogue. But I think we got some great stuff on this album. I did one of the voices, and Tim Richards did a voice, and Sarah Clancy, who I've worked with and had on the podcast before, did the voice of the therapist. My friend Amy, who is an amazing real estate agent in Arizona, where I was living at the time that I recorded this, she played the real estate agent. So it was kind of acting and it kind of wasn't. But and then Katrina Matusik, who is unfortunately no longer with us, did the voice of the lead actress. And yeah, it's you know, at first after she left us, it was a little hard to go back and listen to the album. But, you know, really when I think back on it, we had such a great time with the sessions. She came over, she had just finished a film, very physical film, and she was all bruised up from it. And so, of course, we go out to lunch, and I'm worried that people are going to think I beat her, which I did not. And then we came back and we did the sessions, and she knocked it out of the park in a very short time, just really nailed the emotions. And I was really very happy with the work that she did on it. I wish that we had had a chance to work together again. There were a lot of projects that we talked about doing, but we only worked together, I think, one other time that I can recall. And that was it was a contest, I think it was, like a commercial. And she played one of the characters in the commercial, and I did the music for that. And I was there on set to kind of help out with people. That's actually where we met. And I really liked the way that she did her character. And so I thought of her for this album, and she was really excited to take it on, and sent her the script. And then we did the sessions, and I had just built a contraption that I called the VB2000 for Vocal Booth 2000, which was basically PVC pipe, cardboard, and soundproofing that I made this little vocal room. And there was a desk with a chair in it, and you could sit down comfortably. And I had a fan that you could turn on between takes, and no video monitor or anything, because pretty much everything that we were recording at that point was just audio, and we weren't syncing to video. The one that we needed to do, the dialogue didn't fit the video anyway, and that was that Chinese animation that we did. I think the Lucky Dragon it was called. And so everybody came over, and they went into the VB2000, and they recorded their vocals, and it was a great experience. It was the first sort of cast that I worked with on a project of my own. And it was an interesting experiment for sure, but I'm very proud of this album. I'm very happy with the way that it came out. I don't know if the mystery is as great as I think it is, or as I thought it was at the time. I still do, actually. It's really hard to judge your own work, especially when it comes to that. When you know the story, you don't really know if the clues make sense, if they're good enough clues, if they're too good, if people will even think it's a mystery, because maybe they won't. And so there it is. And I was very happy to work on this, and very honored to have worked with the people that I did on it. And thank all of you guys, because it was a fantastic experience for me, and I'm really glad to be able to share this with the world. So the first song, the opener, is basically just sort of the introduction to the album, and it's not really Twilight Zone-y, but kind of, I think, with obviously a more musical intro than just Rod Serling doing the voiceover as the main theme of the Twilight Zone. A little bit more musical than that, and there is an alternate ending of sorts. But when I say alternate ending, not as far as the story goes. The actual dialogue to the alternate ending was exactly the same, but the music was a lot different, and it is not a part of the album, but that does exist somewhere out there. And so here's a little bit of the first song. And this is kind of the warm-up to the album.
On a beautiful autumn day, a man is shown a home to buy. It all started out so simple, as it often does, but quickly turned into a nightmare that he could have never dreamed in the darkest places of his imagination.
So that's the crux of the opening. It does continue on a little bit beyond that, but it's just setting the tone. This is the world that we're living in. It's a little bit creepy here, and this guy is just trying to buy a house and has no idea what's about to happen to him. So as we go from there, of course, he's trying to buy a house, so he needs a real estate agent, and that's when we meet Amy, the lovely real estate agent who lent her voice to this. We actually sat down for quite a while and discussed sort of the walkthrough of a house. And it was great because I got to research with a person that actually does it and was about to do the actual voiceover. So we spent far more time talking about what they should be experiencing through the walkthrough of this particular house, more so than actually recording it. The actual recording took almost no time at all because she does this for a living, so it was very natural for her. And I really appreciated the depth of information that she gave me so that we could make this something that's fairly accurate. And there was a little bit where she's like, yeah, that wouldn't happen that fast. You wouldn't get from one room to another this fast. The tour would actually take much longer. And of course, everything has to be condensed down into the song so that it flows and everything really well. So that's really the only part that's not quite realistic is the time frame of the walkthrough. We obviously have to zip through it very quickly for the point of the song. And here is a little bit of that.
here we are. I think you'll really love this place. It's built in 1955. It's solid brick construction. The home has been completely remodeled. It's got new wiring, fresh paint. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and a den. The bedrooms are large and it's got...
So that's Amy giving us the walkthrough of the house, the prospective house that this gentleman is going to buy. And, it's interesting. I didn't really name the characters now that I think about it. One of them has a name, but for the most part, they're just characters. They're people that exist in this universe, and you just kind of go with it. There really wasn't a need to name them. I think all the players are very obvious by voice and by their actions. And yes, I don't really think I intentionally did that, but looking back, I don't really think it was necessary. If I had felt it was missing that, I'd like to think that I would have gone back and added that. But I didn't, so I think we're okay. This next song called Strangely Familiar is where, he's kind of coming into his moment of looking through this house and feeling a familiarity that doesn't make any sense to him, because in this incarnation of life, he's never seen this house before. So it doesn't make any sense why it would feel like he's been there before if he knows for a fact that he hasn't. And of course, he doesn't have any clue what this house means to him yet. But hopefully he'll figure it out.
I moved in nearly a year ago, a 30-year mortgage and a speedy escrow, and now I have the home of my dreams. Bought furniture and put new paint on the walls, a few light fixtures and pictures in the hall. I have the home of my dreams.
So that's the first song that Michael sang on, and really, really love his voice on this, especially, blended with the guitars and the drums and all that. So he sang on all the songs, and then I did all the music, wrote and performed all the music on it. And it was a good time, definitely a good time. So this guy is, he obviously is going to buy the house, and he does. And then little things start to happen around the house that he notices. And I think with most people that have a haunting or think that they have a haunting, they try and ignore everything in the beginning until they can't really rationalize any of the actions or explain away certain things that happen. And then they have to start thinking that it's something beyond the normal, which is paranormal. And that could be a ghost, it could be energy, it could be, a lot of different things. We'll get into, on another episode coming up here this October, my theory on ghosts and what that's all about, and experiences that I've had, as well as a friend of mine who will be coming to join me on the show to talk about ghosty things. So that we'll get into later. But for the purposes of entertainment, when it comes to this album, this is a ghost story. So in this world, I'm saying that ghosts exist. And this is what happens when you move into a haunted house. So at this point, he still doesn't really get what's going on. He just doesn't know what to do. And he really doesn't believe in the paranormal. And so he thinks that he's starting to lose his mind a little bit. And he goes to seek out a therapist. And that is where my friend Sarah comes in to play the part of the therapist. She did a wonderful job. And interestingly, I really liked this music. And I repurposed it a bit on the first Mental Sauna album. I think it was on the first one. But I changed it around a little bit and I just felt that it had such a great, relaxing vibe to it, which was really the, what if a therapist would play music, I would imagine that they would play something that's somewhat relaxing, not distracting, nothing that's going to encroach on the conversation, but something that can just set a tone. And sometimes having silence isn't always the best thing. So I would kind of imagine that this is something in the style of what a therapist might play. And so this is in the song Seeking Help. So the next song is called Nightmares and Flashes, and if I'm not mistaken, this was the first song I actually wrote out and was the one that kind of inspired the album, and then I changed the lyrics around a little bit to fit the story more. But originally I was just writing this as a song, and this is kind of where the idea for the album came from. So to hear it now with the final lyrics and everything is really interesting because, as I recall, it was slightly different, and I had to modify it to fit the eventual story. But when I wrote this song, I was literally just writing a song, and it has a good groove to it, and really kind of starts to show the character unraveling a little bit. And it's kind of interesting to see the breakdown of someone as they're put in a situation in their world that is kind of beyond their world. And somebody who thinks rationally or tends to think rationally really has a hard time with things that can't be explained. So this is a little bit of Nightmares and Flashes.
I'm in a warm, safe place. I see the look of love on her face. My blood is getting hot in a master bedroom. She takes my hand in hers. She whispers, but I can't hear the words. Though I know that something's gonna happen soon.
So here's where things start to unfold in the story a little bit, and where I'm going to stop playing cuts of the album because I don't want to, like I said, give away any clues or give too much of the story away. I think it's much more enjoyable, especially the first time you hear it, if you kind of just watch or hear the story unfold as it does. So that's going to be the end of the clips. There are a total of 15 songs on this album that tell the story. In my directory, of course, I have the 16th because I have the alternate epilogue of the story, which is really more of a sort of a live theater ending versus the studio ending that I gave it. But it was a great project to work on. It's a fun project, I think, to listen to, especially if you like rock and roll, but you also like concept albums and you like stories. The narrative of it is a lot of fun. It's really told through the vocals that Michael is singing. And then you have your characters that come in, the cast that enhances it and brings the story to life and fills in the gaps for the narrator. So overall, though, it was a great project to work on. I had a lot of fun. I do like writing rock music, even though it's somewhat difficult sometimes to find things that haven't been done or find new ways to do things. I find when there's so many other blank canvases I could paint on. Like I really love writing relaxation music, but I also love writing new age music, which is a completely different thing. I love writing instrumental music. I love writing music with vocals. I love doing it all, but there's always been a special place in my heart for rock and roll. And I love doing a concept album in the style of rock and roll because it's just a little bit different, whereas normally you would hear something classical. But I think that comes from growing up with Jesus Christ Superstar being the main musical that I was familiar with and listened to at no end. I still do. In fact, I just listened to a couple of songs of it the other day when I was listening for how something was mixed. there was something that was bothering me in one of the songs, and I thought that I remembered a sound being in there that wasn't in there, and I was trying to remember how it blended. But either I was thinking of the wrong song, because in musicals a lot of times there's the same or similar music is played at different parts because it's thematic. But anyway, so I've recently listened to some of it again, and just absolutely fantastic. But that was pretty much my main staple for musicals. So when I think musicals, I tend to think rock and roll. But then since this was a ghost story, so you've got the rock and roll side, and then you've got the ethereal side, and then you've got the music that supports the therapist and all that. So there's really three main themes, and then they just branch out from there. But it was a great project to work on. It was a huge sense of accomplishment when this one was finished. And like I said, it was the first time I was really working with a lot of other people. So it was a lot of coordinating and scheduling and rescheduling when things came up, because, most of the people that I'm working with are actors, and they have projects that come up and things that they need to do. And sometimes they have to reschedule. Completely understandable. I tried to be as patient as I could. And I hope that when everyone who was involved looks back on it, they do see that. Because there's that element of, I want to hurry up and get this out. I wanted it out before Halloween that year. And there's the, I want to do whatever I can to make sure it's the best that it can be. And if that means waiting for the release, of course, I'd rather do that. But the one that usually drives me harder is I've kind of set a release date for this, and I want to make sure that we meet that deadline. So, but overall, I think it worked out. Everybody was very lighthearted when they came over to do their sessions, and seemed to enjoy it, or at least gave me the belief they enjoyed it. But then they're actors, so who knows? But I'm going to go with they enjoyed the sessions. We laughed a lot. We talked before we recorded, and just kind of relaxed everybody as they came over, and it was a good time. And then Michael recorded all his stuff remote, so he recorded in his studio and sent me the vocals back, and I would listen to him and go, can you do this a little differently? But I think if I asked for much of anything, it was probably only one or two minor little things. I think there was one thing where the rhythm of the lyrics or something I thought was a little bit off, or could have been done differently. Because I sent him sketches of how I had envisioned all the songs, with me just kind of talking through them. And I'm sure they were hideous to listen to, but what can you do? You go with the skills that you can provide. And just like the hideous sketches that I give to Kelly when I'm thinking about album cover concepts, she manages to take that and turn it into gold. And I think Michael did the same thing with my scratch guide tracks. So very grateful to everyone who was involved, and it was a wonderful project. I look back at it with nothing but fond memories, and I hope you guys will check out the album. It's in its entirety, and let me know what you think. Drop me a line, scott@scotthaskin.com. And of course, please remember to share the podcast, put your like on it, follow it on whatever media you listen to it on, whether it be Podbean, Google Play, Spotify, iTunes, whichever. I'm sure there's places that it plays that I'm not even aware of. I do post just about every episode, makes it over to YouTube, as long as there aren't any copyright infringement kind of things, which I tend to avoid. But I mean, it's great to get feedback. It's great to have questions answered and whatever. But especially if you go to listen to the album, I would love to know what you think of it. And it is available on all those mediums, and probably tons more that I don't even know about, but those are the main ones I think that people go to anyway. So that should be okay. But thank you guys very much for joining me for another episode. We've got some more great Halloween stuff coming up. Like I said, we've got an episode of Ghost Stories. We've got an episode of the Sedona UFO tour. Hopefully Michael and I will be able to get together and talk about the events of well, for me, it would be last night. And because I drove into town yesterday afternoon, got there about a half an hour before we needed to leave to go on the tour, because the timing of the sunset, I think, is he said was very important. And then had another meeting this morning, and had to head back to Vegas. So it was literally a 24-hour trip from the time I picked up the rental car to the time I got back. And I'm tired, but I wanted to get this recording done because I've got a very busy week ahead, and I wanted to make sure that I had an episode come out this week. I don't think I've missed too many. I think other than the hiatus I took to record to mix the last Haunted Holidays album, I think was really the only time I've taken off. And I've been doing this podcast for a year now. And that is hard to believe, but it's a year this week. And I'm very, very grateful to all the people that have tuned in and listened and left feedback and ratings and followed and shared with others, even if it was just that, one episode that had a guest that they were interested in. Oh, that reminds me, speaking of guests that you might be interested in, my most recent guest last week, Victoria Sandoval, made it to the next round of the Maxim cover contest. So she finished, I think, second in her group, and it was the top 5 of her group that made it to the next round. So the voting will start up again soon, if it hasn't already by the time this airs. I can't remember the date that she said. I think the 14th, so it would have been Monday. And get out there and vote if you would like to see her on the cover of Maxim. I can tell you, I don't know anyone, as far as I know, no one I know has gotten this far, but I can tell you that she's very sweet, as you heard on the podcast. I wish we didn't have the connection problems that we did, but we pushed through it. And she had a lot of very interesting and exciting things to say. And I really admire people that they just go for it. She knows what she enjoys doing, and she gives it her everything, and doing that while raising kids. I can't even imagine how tough that is, because it's tough enough to just be in this business and work on projects while you're looking for the work on your next project or 2 or 3 projects ahead. And it's a grind, this business, but I'm grateful to be a part of it. And I'm very excited for Victoria. I wish her the best as she continues. And I think that's it for People News and the show. So I will end this show by saying thank you for joining me. We will have another wonderful episode coming next week. I do have a couple of other episodes I want to do this month that I may have more than the weeks allow, so I may double up. We'll just see how it goes. But I've got a couple recordings coming up this week that I'm very excited to do. And then, of course, the Halloween episode. So it's going to be a good time. And I thank you for joining me. I hope that you will check out Kindred Spirits. In the meantime, there are a couple of podcasts that I want to tell you guys about. If you are a fan of classic text adventure games, like I am, I grew up playing Scott Adams games like Adventureland and Pirates. What was the Pirate Adventure? I think was what the title was, and Strange Odyssey and Mystery Funhouse, and all those 2-word text adventure games like Take Lamp, Go North, Scare Dragon, and that was the parser. And then Infocom came out with games like Zork and Moonmist and the Spellbreaker series, or the Enchanter series, I think it was called, and Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and all these different games. And their parsers were entire sentences. So really the crux of it was the 2 words, but you could be a little more descriptive and specific with your actions. And so I spent, I don't know how many hours playing these games, but I found that there is a podcast of people that will play a game and then review it. And I was really, really excited by that. So in spare time, I've started listening to that, and I'm just pulling it up. I could tell you who that is. It's brand new to me, but they've been doing it for a little while. It's called Eaten by a Grue, Grue. I listen to them on my Podbean app. Of course, I use the Podbean app because Podbean is the host for this podcast as well. But I've listened to a few of the episodes. It's weird. I want to listen to them all, but I haven't played all these games. So I kind of don't want to have any spoilers that I'm going to remember later. So hopefully one day I will find time to relax and play some games here and there. And I don't want to spoil it for myself. Another podcast I talked about in the Dee Wallace episode is the Alison Arngrim podcast. That's another great one. She interviews some really wonderful people. Eileen Graff, she interviewed Eileen Graff, who was the mom on Mr. Belvedere, if you remember. And I thought that was a wonderful episode. I've always liked her. She's a very talented actress and singer. She does a little bit of a reunion with the cast of Little House on the Prairie, where she played Nellie Olson. But I can tell you she is a much nicer person than that. Also, my friends over at the Deep Purple podcast, Deep Purple being my favorite and probably easily my most influential band. Others have had influence, Beethoven and other people in the Deep Purple family, like Rainbow and Whitesnake and all that. But collectively, I don't think anybody's had a bigger influence over me than Deep Purple has. In fact, I would venture to say Roger Glover would probably be the top of the list, because he's been involved in so many things that I've learned from. And his interviews are always very fascinating. And so, yeah, they have a podcast where they go do a podcast episode of each album from Deep Purple. And right now they've hit up to the Come Taste the Band album. So that's when the band broke up before their 1984 reformation for Perfect Strangers. And so they're taking this time as an opportunity to say, well, what happened to these guys after they left the band, or at the time that the band broke up? What did everybody go and do? And they're doing an album from each different artist. And they've done a couple that I didn't know that I was going to enjoy as much as I did, especially the Nick Simper episode. It was really fascinating to hear the work that he had done after Purple. So check that out if you're a fan of Deep Purple or just music history in general, because they really do a deep dive. They dig up a lot of information, and I'm impressed because I consider myself a pretty strong fan. Been listening to these guys for 30 plus years now, and they're telling me so many things that I didn't know. So I'm really enjoying their show too. Hats off to you guys. And then there's some affiliates of theirs, like the Sabbath Bloody Sabbath podcast. I think that's what it's called. Where they talk about one of the ex-Deep Purple members, Ian Gillan, who's now back in Deep Purple, but he did an album with Black Sabbath. So I listened to the podcast on that. It was very, very well done. I'm not a huge Black Sabbath fan, so I haven't really delved into the rest of that show, but the one that I did listen to, I thought was very in-depth and very impressive. So if you're a Black Sabbath fan, I think it's, like I said, I think it's Sabbath Bloody Sabbath is the podcast, or something similar to that. But anyway, I'm going to quit babbling on and let you get on with your day. In the meantime, thank you again for joining me for another episode. I will be back soon with yet another episode, and then more episodes to follow, and then more episodes after that. Take care, guys. Cheers.